I just want to welcome everybody today. I'm joined by my colleagues, Latana Lawrence, she's our program coordinator, and Elaine Johnson, she's our executive program manager. We've received news from Katie that she's dealing with a litigation emergency at the moment, and so she's asked us to run the meeting in her stead for a bit. Hopefully she'll be able to join us shortly. But what I'd like to do, seeing it's only 1:31, let's give folks another couple of minutes to join the call, and then we'll begin in earnest. Okay. Tanya, I do see Pat over on the attendee side. If we could, for those just joining us, thank you. We're giving folks another minute or two to join, and then we'll start in earnest. Thanks for your patience. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, thanks for being with us. As I mentioned, just
recording in progress.
Our chair, Katie Connell, just called our office explaining that she's having a litigation emergency going on at the moment, and she hopes to join us as soon as possible, but she asked me to get the meeting started in her place. So I think y'all know me. I'm Noelle Alvarez. I'm the staff attorney to the Georgia Child Support Commission. I'm joined today by my colleague, Latana Lawrence and Elaine Johnson. The three of us in tandem serve as staff to the commission. So we're here for the Parenting Time Deviation Study Committee, as usual. And we're going to get started. I will take the poll. I just by a quick look at our panelists in Zoom, I don't think we're quite at quorum. We now have 22 members of this study committee, and so we need 12 quorum. So I might postpone take approval of the minutes, or vote on approval of the minutes for a little bit to see if we can get. But that being said,
Noelle,
yeah,
this is Pat.
Hey, Pat.
I'm having a very hard time understanding what you're saying. It sounds like you're a drive-through and we're going wah 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 wah. I'm so
it's
sorry.
It's a Charlie Brown movie. That's what it is.
I can't even hear through my headphones. I went and got my headphones and I'm still not able. It's very muffled and bad quality audio.
That's so weird. Is that any better? A little bit better?
Yes, that's better.
Yeah. Okay, I just moved my laptop, so I hope it's picking me up better.
It is. It's picking you up.
Okay. Better. I don't know what. Anyway, all right. Sorry about that. Okay, here we go again. So let me re-explain why I'm opening the meeting. We just got a call that our chair, Katie Connell, is dealing with a litigation emergency right at the moment. She's asked me to start the meeting in her place. So I don't think we're quite at quorum yet, but I will take a quick roll call just to make sure that we're not missing anybody. Okay, is William Alexander with us? Let's see him. Lori Anderson. Ryan Bradley. Pat, we have, I know, she just spoke, fantastic. Byron Cuthbert, I believe I see Byron. Yeah, Byron, I got you. I see you in the Zoom. Judge Davis, is he with us? I know he has his trouble. Sometimes he's hearing, sometimes he's in court. I don't see him yet. Judge Dear Jackson. Sally Fox. Barbara Gibson. Adam Flecklin, I do see
I'm here.
you. Hey, Adam, thanks for being with us. Jennifer Keaton. Johanna, I believe I just saw her. Johanna, yay, there she is. Hey, Johanna. Michael Mainley, is he with us? Let's see. Jill Massey. Sarah Molden. Mindy Pillow, I think I saw her. Yes, there she is. I see you on the screen. And Mark Rogers.
Here.
Hey there, Mark. I see you. Jamie Rush. Yep. All right.
I'm
cool.
here.
Hey there, Jamie. I see you. Wayne Sleer. I don't see Wayne. Okay. Charles Spinardi. Sometimes he comes through as a, oh, somebody's. Okay. One of our attendees, Latana, is raising their hand. So could you possibly, can you chat with them or have them, chat? Oh, they were just saying hello. All right. Sometimes
Okay.
Charles joins by phone only from DCSS, but I
Yeah.
don't think that's him. Okay.
Right. I'll see.
Okay. Erica Thornton. I don't see her. And Carol Walker. I know I saw her. Yeah. Hey, Carol. Okay.
And Latana, can you promote Regina quick? I've tried multiple times and it's not promoting.
I know I said Ryan Bradley, who I don't think is here with us, but did I say Kevin Bradley? And are you here? I'm not seeing it, but okay. So we don't have either Bradleys. Okay.
Okay, I see William Alexander.
Oh, great. Okay.
And he's promoted. Okay.
Awesome. One. All right. So for purposes of quorum, let me just verify.
I want to know if we get a pay raise with our promotion.
If only we could. 7, 8.
I heard we get
Nine.
twice
I think I have
the pay.
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. At the moment, I'm only shining 9, and we need 12 for quorum. So I'm going to just table.
Well, the one person on call is Charles Bernardi. I'm just trying to send him over, but again, for some reason, the computer.
Okay. Well, that's great. Okay. Great.
I'm just trying to get him over there.
All right. But even with Charles, I don't think we're quite at our 1, 2,
Yeah, we would
3,
need one
4,
more.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 10 would be Charles. Okay. 4, 5, 6. 10. Yeah, we're only at 10, so we do need 2 more. So I'm just going to set aside the issue of the minutes from last meeting, and we'll just, I suppose, move on to the old business on the agenda. Oh my gosh, and look at that. We're pretty much right on time. 1:40 to 2:45. We have a lot of time slated for this because it is the bulk of this meeting. It was the reports from those volunteers calling practitioners in other states to learn about the, pros and cons of the way they handle parenting time. So, is there anybody who's dying to go first with their report? Please let me know. Otherwise,
Let's get this over with.
yeah. All right. Awesome.
There you go, Pat.
Donna was going to see you. I believe you spoke to somebody or some folks in Virginia. Is that right?
I spoke with the attorney Daniel Gray in Virginia, and he was on the court's most recent guidelines review. And it was very interesting speaking with him because they have had parenting time adjustment built into their calculator since the beginning. And originally it started at 120 days. So it had kind of a cliff effect. So nothing kicked in until 120 days. That has since been changed several years ago to 20%. And if there's a 20% level of visitation, he said he saw a lot less, I'm going to get custody so I don't have to pay you child support kind of arguments, which we see all the time. So he said that really helped that taper off. There was so much less of it. But they've gone further recently, and what they have done now is they have come up with worksheet calculations for a family that has a mix of shared and split custody, or shared custody for different periods of time, or one parent has, I can't remember what the third one was. Let me look at my notes really quick. Sorry. I do have notes that can be distributed to everybody. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Shared parenting starts at 90 overnights. Not, I said 20%. I totally misspoke.
Oh, okay.
Okay. It was 120, it went to 90. And he said that made a big difference. The recent things.
That's 25%.
Yeah. A day is 24 hours, and if a child goes to school during that day, then it's not a day. So, and they have case law that has said that from the 90s.
Wow.
They still abide by that. Mixed parenting time, split parenting with one child shared with another. Yeah, different amounts of shared time. And I'm sorry, there's one other, and I just cannot pull it to my brain right now. But anyway, so that's what they did in 2018. Those are the only changes that they made. So I thought it was interesting that he also practices in 3 different jurisdictions. He said Virginia was the stingiest, Washington, D.C. is the most generous, and Maryland's somewhere kind of in the middle.
And when you, okay, in terms of credit given to a non-custodial for parenting time, he thought Virginia was stingy, DC was the most generous, and Maryland was somewhere in between.
No, he was talking about the child support amounts.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Okay, like the BCSO. But as far as the, I don't know that I would argue that it was fair that an overnight means the whole 24 hours, but their case law has been that way so long that I think people don't argue about it anymore. That's kind of the impression he gave me.
Okay.
Okay.
What about, say, when someone has 20% parenting time? is much fuss made about that, or is there debate over making changes?
No, he said there is no debate over it right now, that everybody seems happier since they went to the 120 days. 90 days, I'm sorry, I've got it backwards. They went to the 90 days from 120 days. So essentially 25%, it was close to a third, now it's 25%.
So at 20%, you get no
Okay.
adjustment.
Right. Pat, I have a question for you. Did he have any knowledge, and may not have, of how they came up with the particular monetary calculator that they used and what it was addressing? You know, was it addressing food? Was it addressing housing? Or did he have any idea?
We actually talked about that a little bit because we talked about our deviations, and we talked about what's like the 7% ceiling that's in the, or threshold that's in the special expenses of child rearing and things like that. And he said that stuff is not included in our child support tables.
Their model goes back long time. It's one of the first that Jane Venor's group proposed, and basically it was made up. I mean, there's no economic foundation. Well, I mean, it is. I mean, I've participated in their guideline reviews and made presentations and listened to legislators in various committees, and basically they played with math to get the outcomes that they wanted, and that's what it was. It was outcome driven, not economics driven.
Well, in a lot of cases, don't we do that with our worksheet? With
What?
the deviations, and we make it come out the way we want it to come out.
Well, actually, there's appellate opinion that you can't do that, but of course it does happen.
Yeah. It does say that the parents can agree on what the parents can agree on. So the statute says that. And
Mark, pardon to interrupt, I just want to clarify, what are you just saying? You think in general, Virginia's guidelines are generally not economically sound overall?
No, I'm talking about the parenting time adjustment. Now, it's a whole nother debate about the cost table. We do not want to go there.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. So you take issue with specifically their parenting time adjustment being?
Yeah, the adjustment, you know, it's arbitrary whether you start at 20%, 25, 40, and then the multiplier, that's arbitrary. It's whatever they argue over, and you know which groups went out for a low, well, you know, it's a math function and they force it to match what they want it to be. It's that simple.
They use 1.4 as their multiplier.
And other states use other multipliers,
Right,
and there's no
right.
rhyme or reason.
And I also wanted to point out that they do have a self-reserve amount built into the self-support reserve built into their calculator.
Yes,
it's 150% of poverty level.
Yeah, you can sit on the other study committee and say that.
No, I can't. I don't have time.
I'm no comment.
Okay, Pat, did you have anything else generally after speaking with Mr. Gray?
No, he was very generous with his time. We spent a good hour on the phone, and he has offered anything that we draft. If we'd like him to take a look at it and get feedback, he'd be happy to do that, which I thought was very nice of him.
That's great. Does anybody else have questions for Pat about her discussion with the practitioner in Virginia? Okay. All right.
One quick question. Sorry, I couldn't get my button.
Oh, yeah. I'm just going to pause for 1 second because I think I at least see her avatar here, and there's the real life Katie. All right, I gladly hand this back to you, Katie.
Well, I'm not sure I'm actually going to take the reins back from you because I think I need to pop back off. I'm dealing with a incredibly time sensitive custody issue with picking up from school and failed sober link tests and that kind of thing. So I assure you it is it's that serious. Otherwise I would hand it off to somebody else, but I can't. Can I give you just like a 10-second update before my phone starts ringing again with the school principal, the guardian, and or my opposing counsel
Yeah,
who I've been talking to?
please.
I had a lengthy call with a family law practitioner in Minnesota. I'm working on my Nevada person, but I have my notes. I promised her that I would edit them and flip them to her before before distributing a hard copy to y'all. But I will tell you that it was super informative, and my biggest takeaway that I will leave you with before I go deal with this other thing, and I'm terribly, terribly sorry, but my biggest takeaway is that when they switched to an income sharing model, it seems like it was around the same time that Georgia made the switch from a percentage based on the number of children to an income sharing model. They had a cliff situation. Hopefully everybody on this call is familiar with that term since we've been using it. And so they made another change specifically to the parenting time piece of their calculator. She's going to get me the exact dates, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 years after the initial switch to income sharing, because the cliff was having such a negative effect on litigants and the number of cases and the way the cases were being, the people were posturing, and she was very positive about the changes, and she's been practicing long enough to have practiced before it was an income sharing model, when it was first an income sharing model with a parenting time adjustment that had a cliff situation, and now for several years. And she does neutral work, so she does mediation work now in addition to litigation now. So I was particularly intrigued by not just that initial change that they made from percentage to income sharing with a parenting time adjustment, but actually the one where they addressed their cliff and the way that it was impacting, just the volume of cases and the positions that parents were taking. So she's going to get me more information on that change because I just told her plainly I found that to be sort of the most intriguing thing she was telling me. Otherwise, there were lots of similarities to what Georgia does, but they do have a parenting time calculator built in, and it has evolved since they first put it in place. And I think it's fair to say she would describe it as them having sort of learned the hard way with the first round of their parenting time calculation, and then made adjustments from there. So I think we should pay particular attention to that so that we don't unnecessarily make a mistake that they made and then had to learn from, to the extent that we end up in that direction. So
I've got a question related to your contact. I spent a moderate amount of time actually trying to find the formula for the parenting time adjustment so I can actually see what it looks like. And I'm baffled. I cannot find the actual formula.
I've got it.
All right, that's what I want. I want to play with, put it in Excel and play.
okay, well she has sent me the link. It's they don't call it schedules like we do, but it sounds like it's like schedules from the way she described it. Sort of embedded and then flows through. So
but there's a formula behind the table, right?
Yes.
Okay, could you email me?
How could there not be? What else would the table do if it didn't have some sort of embedded formula in it?
There are plenty that, never mind.
Okay, and then I'll they use overnights as their time factor or their increment. But like I said, I will get my notes from that call tightened up and sent out to everybody so that everybody has consistent answers to the 21 questions. And I'm really, really sorry that, that I can't do more today. But I have to go. Noelle and Elaine, will y'all please try and get another meeting or even two, even if they're in pretty short succession, so that we can keep doing these conversations on the calendar? Because I know how busy everybody's going to be, and it's really just going to get worse as we get into fall, as holidays start creeping up on us.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, everybody. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, we have October 6th already, but we do need to pick the next date after that.
Okay, let's
Okay.
see if we can pick a date.
We'll do that today for sure.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, back to Johanna. Thank you for your patience. I think you were about to ask something when Katie joined.
Yes, thanks. I was just wondering if there was any discussion of whether, if Virginia has a calculator, and if there was any discussion of whether it's user friendly for pro se litigants, their calculator. Is Pat still on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
It's funny that you should ask that. Their calculator is privately owned. And so law firms pay to use it, but there is, the agency has a calculator that apparently is free for people to access, but he tried to send me a link and he didn't have the right link for it. And I've searched and I haven't been able to find it. So, but I also don't know what one they use that is privately owned. So I'll write him back and get that information so we can actually take a look. Any other questions? Okay, thanks. I'm muting myself again.
Very good. All right, thank you, Pat. And I believe Elaine said that you had submitted something. Did you have a final write-up of your findings? I suppose and Katie was working on a final write-up for Minnesota. And so we'll determine at what point those will all be circulated. Okay, thank you, Pat, for that, both the written findings and your verbal report just then. That was great. Moving on. Adam, are you feeling comfortable to report on Florida by any chance? You're next on my list.
I can give you a very short report, and that is that I have not had time to connect with folks in Florida. I had a week-long jury trial in DeKalb County a couple weeks ago, so
Oh, wow.
I've been a little busy.
I understand.
Right, William? My co-counsel.
Just a little busy. I think you're underselling it, Adam.
So I apologize, but I'm working on getting some answers to the Florida questions to the Florida folks, and we'll endeavor to make sure to have that by October 6th.
Thank you. We'll make sure you're on the agenda for October 6th.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, next on my list is Carol. Did you want to speak yet on Tennessee?
Yeah, it was interesting to go back and look at Tennessee because it was obviously the template for the starting point for our income shares. And I had certainly forgotten some things since it's been almost 20 years. But basically, it's kind of interesting because their law basically says that there is a rebuttable presumption for custody in Tennessee of a minimum of every other weekend, Friday to Sunday, 2 weeks in the summer and 2 weeks in the holiday. But then it goes on to talk about other custodial arrangements. But I had the opportunity to speak with a lawyer in Memphis, and she has been practicing law since before Tennessee went to income shares. So she had some pretty interesting concepts. As I understand it, Tennessee looks at costs and they call them by names like transferred costs, which are things such as food, and duplicated costs, which are things like housing and clothing. Tennessee allows a parenting time adjustment starting at 94 days, which is basically 25% of parenting time. You have a primary residential parent and you have an alternate residential parent. And the parent that has more days is the primary residential parent. There is a mathematical formula, which is the number of days, which is called a variable multiplier. And it is built into the child support tables. And it is applied to the BCSO, which increases the amount of the BCSO in relation to the parenting time. And then that is divided proportionately by the parent's income. And then there is a subtraction in the amount from the alternative residential parent to the primary residential parent. Sounds really complicated, but actually it's pretty simplistic in application.
That's the cross-crediting methodology.
Sort of, yes. And one of the things that I learned was that really, for the most part, based on her experience, and she has been a litigator for a number of years, but is also a mediator and arbitrator. And one of the things that she said was that she had no idea how the methodology and the numerical calculation was done. And I've been trying to follow up on that, and I would like to sort of have a little bit of an opportunity to do some more on that, trying to chase that down, because I think it's interesting. So basically you have a multiplier that comes in and then adds to the BCSO, and then it backs it out. She said to me that in Tennessee that the week-to-week custodial basis is not uncommon. So almost every case that you have, there is going to be a parenting time adjustment because you're going to get over that 25% threshold. So that statutory presumption of every other weekend is not applicable for the most part, even though it's in the statute. It's like it doesn't really belong there anymore. People don't fight much about days. Days are a majority of a 24-hour period, but in Tennessee, it's not exactly, it doesn't have to be 24-hour midnight to midnight. It can be 24 hours otherwise. But she basically said that for the most part, people don't fight a whole lot about this, which, you know, I thought was interesting. She said that judges sometimes will not accept the presumptive amount with the adjustment, depending upon what the amount is. And there's just not a lot of litigation at this point over the parenting time adjustment and the parenting plan. There is some difficulty with the low income model and the pro se's, and I've been trying to follow up with the head of the Legal Aid Society for East Tennessee, and I haven't been able to connect with her yet. But the tool is required, the worksheets are required, and for the most part, the judges are following it without deviation. One thing that was kind of interesting is that if you have less than 60 days of parenting time, there's actually an adjustment upward for the primary residential parent. So if someone is not exercising parenting time, there is a statutory calculation for that.
But don't they have the same cost table methodology where it assumes the custodial parent incurs all?
Mark, something's wrong with your audio.
Yeah. Whoa.
Can you hear me?
It's super, super loud, very intense and loud.
All right, let me.
Very intense, very loud. Something happened to your audio.
How about now?
Still the same.
Hold on. There's always plan B.
Carol, can you repeat while he's doing that, what you said about sometimes the judges won't accept the presumptive amount? Is that before?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Mark, it's very loud. You're coming.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you super loud. It's just something's happened to your audio.
I turned down my volume significantly, and that helped. I mean, I was like,
so we should individually maybe try to turn down our audio, and maybe that will help.
yeah.
Basically, what she said was.
Go ahead. I'll get back later.
Okay. Sorry, I keep doing that.
Let's go.
What she basically said was that the judges are being careful and looking at the numbers that are coming out of the calculator, but for the most part, that they don't mess around too much with the numbers, that there is a strong presumption that the adjustment is appropriate. She said that she didn't really feel like the parenting time adjustment was causing any more conflict in parenting time discussions or negotiations. And, you know, it kind of gets back to the thing that we as practitioners, Pat was talking about earlier, which is you kind of figure out what the number is and then you kind of work backwards to get there. I mean, that sounds crazy, but I think that is something that happens in Tennessee as well. I did go and run some numbers using their calculator. It was easy, and I thought accessible. I have been told that pro se litigants do have some difficulty with it, and I do want to follow up on that.
Okay, I'm just going to pause things for 1 second. Thank you, Carol. I just want to update. We've had two study committee members join us since we first started. We've got Wayne Slayer and Judge Davis on with us now. So what we've been doing is hearing reports from folks who've spoken with practitioners in other states. So far, it sounds like we've heard from really veteran practitioners, people who've been in there, people in Minnesota and Tennessee and Virginia who've been practicing many, many years. In a couple of instances, both were there when it was the old model and moved to the income shares model. They account for parenting time in their calculations. And so this is gleaning some good information, but I'm just going to put the discussion on hold because what I would love to do is ask, I just want to remind everybody that Elaine circulated the minutes from the August 25th meeting in the email. So do I have a motion to approve those minutes as distributed? Oh, I see Pat. Thank you. And seconded by Johanna. So I want to confirm that we do have quorum with now 13 members present. Quorum is only 12, so we're more than over that. And I've got Pat moving and Johanna. And if you'd unmute yourself, all ayes approving minutes, please say aye.
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 Do I hear any nays? Unmute yourself if you're voting against the minutes.
And Noelle, I'm going to type a message to Charles Finardi. We have never been able to get him moved over as a panelist. Do not know what's wrong. No, LaTonna and I both have been trying forever. So I'm going to ask him to vote in the chat.
Sure. And is anybody going to abstain from voting on approval of the minutes from the August 25th meeting? Okay, so at the moment, until we hear from Charles, I have 100% yeses. Okay, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so Carol, please continue on with your report from the practitioner you talked about in Tennessee.
One other thing that was very interesting to me was that evidently if you have a situation where you have parents of children who are not married to each other, that all of those cases go to juvenile court. And in juvenile court, there is, as I understand it, a standard rule which basically says that, you know, you get the first, third, and fifth weekend and 2, 2 weeks in the summer, which equals that 80 days that's in the statute. And that then does not trigger the parenting time adjustment. So I don't know any more about that, and we'll continue to try and find out about that from other practitioners whose contact information I have, because I thought that was very interesting, that it just was like this cookie cutter thing that happened, and it seemed a little strange, but I can find out.
Okay, so Carol, what I hear you saying is custody disputes between people who are married and people who are unmarried are treated very differently, so much so that once
the establishment of child support and the establishment of parenting time all happens in juvenile court.
Yeah, I mean, that's very I mean, having it and have jurisdiction in a different court is significant, I think.
So,
and I wonder why.
So, that's a whole different issue that's very different from us.
But arguably, regardless of which court they're in, they're using the same guidelines and the same calculator.
Well, but it doesn't sound like that's the case, because it sounds like those people get pushed into an 80-day schedule. Okay, which doesn't allow for a parenting time adjustment. Sort of doesn't really matter in Georgia because it wouldn't apply that way here because of our separate statutory authority. But I just thought it was interesting as an aside to look at. So, and that's all I have right now, but I should have some more on October the 6th about the low income. So,
okay. Thank you, Carol. And you're going to submit written findings?
Well, that was a question that I had. I did call Elaine at the end of the week last week, and if there is an expectation that we are to do so, I certainly would do that. So
I think that would be helpful. Do you agree, Elaine? At least some sort of basic summary about, I think that's very interesting that it was a woman you spoke with, right? Woman?
Yes.
That she finds that people aren't fighting about this.
No,
so that's great.
Well, what she said was that there really are not very many disputes.
Right.
That people are working, well together, and it is not a motivating factor. Other things are motivating the money issue, but that there might be an adjustment. For example, if the child support is one way, you might adjust out the alimony, which is different in Tennessee than it is in Georgia. And I think much more prevalent in Tennessee than it is in Georgia. You might adjust out the alimony obligation sort of as a counter to what's going on with the parenting time adjustment so that it doesn't necessarily create a conflict as much.
Interesting. Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Carol?
Noelle, I have something based on Carol and I, the conversation we had last Friday. So Pat sent us a copy of the 20 questions with the answers from the person that she interviewed. Perhaps everyone could at least at minimum send us that so we'd have the ability to go through each one of those answers and make some comparisons. So Carol, if you could send us that would be great.
I'm wondering, because Katie mentioned that she's sending her practitioner a draft first and seeing if it's all kosher. And I'm wondering if I should be doing the same.
And you certainly can. I think that's one of the things Katie had talked about before. You can if you want to.
Okay.
And
I do have a draft of all mine. I just, maybe now I'm thinking I ought to just check with her, see if she wants the opportunity to look at it first.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Johanna.
Okay, anybody else with questions or comments from Carol's report on Tennessee? All right, Carol, looks like you're out of hot seat, at least for now. So thank you so much for your time in doing that. And so Johanna, did you want to report out on
New Jersey?
I would be glad to. And my presentation will probably be longer than everybody's because I tend to go through. And we didn't get all the questions answered. I'll just say that it sort of flowed and I tried to plug in where I could the answers to the questions, but it just didn't work the way that I was envisioning. But I talked with Amanda Trigg, who's a private practitioner who actually graduated from Emory Law, and she was in practice here back in 94 to 98 in domestic law. And then she moved to New Jersey, was in legal aid there, and then has moved into private practice now as a private, a partner at Cone Liflin up there. So I felt like had a good perspective because she knew a little bit about Georgia, and she also had a little bit of legal aid experience. But I also was able to connect with her help to Mary McManus Smith, who is Chief Counsel for Family Law and Director of Litigation at Legal Services of New Jersey. So we have not actually talked yet. We haven't done our interview, but she's willing to do it and hoping that happens by next week. So that'll give me a little bit better idea about the low income folks. But we did get a little bit of intel from Amanda on that. So, okay, so very brief, I'll try to be brief. Recap of New Jersey is you have 2 separate worksheets, and the sole parenting worksheet is applicable up to 28% parenting time. And parenting time does not include vacations and holidays. They do not count towards the total. And they are based on overnights, which I think it says, 12 hours or more of a 24-hour day. Okay. Then in that sole parenting worksheet, the parent, they call it the parent of alternate residence. So the non-custodial parent in our language gets a % adjustment just for variable expenses. So even at that minimal level of visitation, 0 to 28%, they get an adjustment for variable expenses. So New Jersey has their child support, like the BCSOs that we have, the variable expenses account for 37% of that number. And then you have fixed expenses counting for 38%. And then you have the last 25% is what we call controlled expenses. So the variable that's applicable, I'm hearing feedback, sorry, I don't know who's on off speaker. Is that distracting anybody else? I'll just keep talking. So for that that sole parenting worksheet, they're getting credit, and that's for things like food and transportation. So it's automatically, you plug in a number of days and it tells you which calculator you should use. The shared parenting is 28% and above, and you get credit for variable and fixed expenses. So the fixed expenses are like housing and utilities. So there is a bit of a cliff, and that's the basic overview. And then the calculator they have, it does all the math for you. It's embedded in their calculator. All right, so she said that the guidelines were in effect when she went into practice, so she didn't have any information her, before, so we don't know anything about that. She said we asked the question, did she see the benefit to children for the parenting time adjustments? And her response to that, it was absolutely necessary to have that because of the cost of housing. So she said virtually everyone in her practice is, getting to that 28% threshold because it matters so much to get that adjustment. She said pros and cons. Okay, as far as pros and cons, she said the con is that they have a continuing issue of determining what are fixed versus variable expenses. We didn't flush that out a whole lot, so I guess there is some issue there. She said also when there's multiple children, it's a lot more complicated because when one goes off to college, the housing expenses don't change. So I didn't completely follow all that. And Carol was in this meeting. By the way, let me just say that Carol was so helpful because she was able to pull things from a private practitioner's experience, which I don't have since I'm overseeing a bunch of pro se litigants. So Carol, jump in at any point if you want to add.
They have child support through college.
Yeah.
Okay, which is different than us. So, you know, that raises a whole layer of issues that we don't have in Georgia, which gets back to the multiplier thing. One of the things that I thought was interesting that struck me was that two things. One is New Jersey spends a lot of money on child support calculations. It's very clear that they have made it an important aspect of their family law, and their child support guidelines and definitions are done by rules that are modified every other year. And so if they see a problem or they see something that's going south, they have very experienced lawyers, judges who are all on this rules committee that basically are able to fix it without having to go back to the legislature. So it allows them to have perhaps a more complex model than we would probably be able to have in Georgia, given our financial constraints and the lack of importance, I guess, this has to a majority of people from a legislative standpoint. But the other thing is they seem to place a lot more emphasis on what kind of parenting is going on during sort of the regular year, you know, day to day, week to week, you know, and not just looking at an artificial number for, oh, it's 30 days in the summer. Well, that's a little bit different than if you're looking at it from a week to week situation. And that was something that we did kind of talk some about in terms of how that affected the whole issue of whether you're going to get the adjustment for the housing, which is evidently in New Jersey a big deal because of the cost of housing, especially around metropolitan New York City. And so the cost, for example, of a 2-bedroom apartment versus a 1-bedroom apartment for the non-custodial parent is a big deal. And so I think they've tried, so they're a little bit, again, different. And one of the things that she used to practice in DeKalb County with Joe Winter way back when, for those of us who are really old and remember Joe Winter, okay? And one of the things that she pointed out is what are you going to do in Georgia when you've got a huge state? You know, that affects more than in an urban environment, the ability for you to be able to deal with a more shared parenting time schedule. And how are you going to deal with that? Which I thought was interesting. The other thing is that New Jersey has a really kind of weird taxation system, and part of what drives some of these decisions in New Jersey is based upon where your child goes to school, because there is a tax penalty if you enroll your child in an improper school district. So that sometimes has something to do with the parenting time adjustment, on whether it occurs or it doesn't occur. So
she did, to add to that, she said that 50-50 is not often done because of the practicalities of that. But she did say that most everybody reaches that 28% threshold in her practice. And if it does get to 50-50, even though the calculator itself, like you're just plugging in numbers and it's doing all the math for you, but she said once you get to 50-50, exactly, there is this funny case, and I will just put this in the notes, but you actually have to back out a percent of the BCSO so that the parties are kind of splitting the controlled expenses, which normally the custodial parent is given 100% credit for, but in that situation of 50-50, they have to back it out. Otherwise, the lesser income parent ends up getting the shaft, is what she said. But she said they don't argue over what classifies as a day. They do argue, like Carol said, about the regular visitation. They don't really argue about holidays. and vacations, as far as I could tell, Carol, right? That's what she was saying. And let's see, what else?
And she said that it was interesting. She said, like most things, she says the primary residential parent always feels like they're getting the short end of the stick with the parenting time adjustment, and the alternative resident parent doesn't. One of the things that she brought up too was that judges in New Jersey don't always examine as closely as they should whether or not the extra bedroom requirement is really being met.
Yeah. And that is a requirement. I failed to say that, but you do have to actually show evidence of separate living accommodations if you're going to get that controlled expense adjustment. But I guess that's not always happening. There is a calculator that's available online. She said that the pro se version of that does not jive necessarily with what the judge's staff is using, and so that can create some issues. And she also said that most pro ses don't know how to use it well, so the burden's falling on the law clerks. I think I'll get a little more info from the legal aid person. She said, like Carol said with Tennessee, it's the judges are really good with what the adjustment is. So in fact, they get angry if you try to deviate from what the parenting time adjustment says it should be. So they can argue about those factors, but because they're just presumptions, but they prefer you not do it. And let's see. And she felt like it was utilized in an appropriate manner. She didn't feel like it was too often given or too low. I mean, she just felt like it was just right. And now she did say the data that they have, I think, Carol, is based on 2013 number. The child support amounts are based on 2013 data, and that is causing a view that the child support amounts are paltry compared to what they should be, which I just think is interesting because we haven't.
What she said and was that the last time that the tables were adjusted was in 2013, but it was based upon data from 2008, 2009, and 2010. She thought, and that created a result from when obviously the crash was occurring in 2008, 2009, and 2010, which sort of made the numbers actually less in New Jersey than they were in the previous table. And that there were a lot of people very unhappy about that. And so I think as going forward, when we're talking about looking at the numbers that, again, next year and methodology to be used for this, I think that's certainly something to think about.
So we talked a little bit about how extracurriculars are handled. That was one of our questions. So they do have some extracurricular costs factored into their BCSOs, but she said most of the time that's not even gonna get close to covering it. So they do a lot of add-ons. So, and that's almost every case she's dealing with, a bunch of add-ons, and they divide those expenses pro rata. So I know that doesn't really work perfectly with our situation. Mark Rogers is muted, not muted. Okay. Can he hear us?
He just said, yeah, I just got an email from Mark. Hold on.
Okay.
Something about he's on. It appears that he has called in. So he just wrote that he's on the phone now. He can hear us, but he's not able to speak. And he's that number coming in 6783. Well, I won't repeat the whole thing, but it's on a number coming in. Okay.
Right. Did he jump back off of panelists here? He did. Because he was on panelists and I saw him as attendee calling in, but I'm unable to switch a phone call over to panelists. So.
And I can't promote him either because it's not giving me an option. It's just giving me an option to remove him, but not to promote him.
Right. So he's going to come back on through the phone. He's going to have to come back on the computer. He's going to have to.
Yeah, we're not going to.
Is there any way of them to unmute themselves just through the phone, like something *6 or what was that? Anyway, I'm
Well,
not
I'm
sure.
gonna click, I'm gonna try something.
Allow the top. You can do that. Wait. Ready to go? Here we go. Okay.
Okay. For the sake of time, okay, does anybody, so thank you for letting us know that, Mark, that you've dialed back in for some reason, I guess because of the volume issue, but so he's now on the phone. Okay, does anybody have any, but Johanna, was that the full extent of your report?
Well, there was one other thing I wanted to mention, and that's that we talked a little bit about parties who are going not for custody orders, how the parenting time adjustment works in those situations. And so like parties unmarried, for example, or even married, I guess, if they're going to get a child support order, they can do that in the court system. And they are given credit for what they tell the judge their arrangement is, even if there is no custody order. So I thought that was very interesting. And I think Florida might do that as well. Like, I think their administrative setup, their child support division is able to do that too. But then she said it was interesting because then it sets sort of a de facto visitation arrangement because they're plugging in this information into their calculator, and so then it's there. Does that kind of ring true to what you heard, Carol? Sort of.
Yeah, basically, if you go in and you say, well, we're going to do every other weekend from Thursday through Monday morning, and then one day during the week, and so it meets the threshold for the parenting time adjustment, and then the worksheet and the child support order is set based upon those calculations, then you sort of have set the precedent for then one or the other of the parties going back and getting a custody order based upon that agreement. So kind of an interesting aside.
Carol asked her if she had any words of wisdom for us, and she said, knowing about the huge economic disparity in Georgia, that it's going to be really important for us to know the economic principles, that we would use going forward, on which the guidelines are based. So I think Carol alluded to that.
I think, well, one of the things she said, you have two Georgias. You have metropolitan Georgia, and then you have the rest of Georgia. And Georgia is really big, and it's very different from Dade County in the northwest corner to DeKalb County. They're almost two different places. And that, from having practiced here, she thinks, however we deal with it, we need to address some of that. It's a much different situation than New Jersey is, for example. So I thought that was interesting that she would say that.
That's all I have.
Very good. Thank you, Johanna. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Johanna? Nothing? Carol, did you have anything you wanted to add in about that? Okay. All right, so then I think that's all we have for today in terms of reports from discussions with practitioners from other states. We'll have Katie on the agenda on October 6th, the report out on Nevada, and we'll have Adam slated to report out on Florida when we meet next. All right, so we are running about 10 minutes ahead of schedule, but we did have some time set aside for any new business, any issue, any member wanted to raise at this time. So is anything out of what we've talked about so far that you'd like to discuss?
Noelle, I want to clarify one thing. Carol, did you want to be added back on the 10-6 agenda to talk about Tennessee further?
Yeah, I really am trying to track with the low income person and see if I can get some better understanding And again, part of that is because of the similarities of the two statutory schemes between Tennessee and Georgia. You know, I'd like to know if they're really perceiving they have a problem. You know, that would be good to know, I think.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Elaine. Okay, any members want to raise any, yeah, I see a hand. Go
Are
ahead.
you going to go ahead and schedule the next following meeting? You've got October 6th.
Yes.
Are you just going to
Yeah.
put something on the calendar and let everybody know?
Yes, no, I'd like to talk about that now. Elaine, do you have any?
Well, we need, I
Suggestions?
have to have a minimum of 30 days. So we look at the 15th, I really would rather jump to the 22nd and count from there. If we're looking at, say, 30 days, well, if we're looking at 30 days from today, that would put us at the 15th of October. That is the date of the Child Support Commission meeting, but I don't have enough time to publicize for the 30 days. So we would have to move to the week of the 18th.
And I think that's good anyway, because we are meeting on the 6th. I don't think we need to be that close to the 6th.
Right,
So
yeah.
2 weeks
So then
out from,
we could even move further to that last week of October.
yeah, I mean, the week of the 18th is fine.
No, because that would be 2 weeks after the 6th of October. We've been going 3 weeks. Do we want to keep it that way, or? Because
I think we should. Committee members, any thoughts on that? Do you want to meet the week
I
of
think you should
October?
get some guidance from Katie.
Well, that's what I was going to say also, that regardless of what we pick out, we're going to have to ask her what works. So I could ask her initially about the week of the 18th and the week of the 25th and see if she has a date. Does she want to go 3 weeks after the 6th, which would put us the week of the 25th? Or if she wants to just, try to get us about 30 days after the 15th. So I can send her an email and ask her, what does she want to do in either one of those weeks?
Okay, can I propose temporarily, pending Katie's approval, that we set something maybe for Wednesday, the 27th in the morning? Does anybody have a conflict that they know about of right now? Oh, Johanna does. Okay.
Mornings, I think, are going to be always kind of tricky for me, except certain days. And I thought last time Katie said that afternoons, did we not talk about whether afternoons were better for most folks?
And I think, and we also considered Judge Davis and judicial concerns about maybe moving it more to right over the lunch hour instead of 1:30, maybe making it more like noon to 1:30 or something along those lines. But
That's fine with me. I stack most of my appointments with folks in the morning.
got it.
Okay.
I mean, if I know far enough in advance, I can move people. I just need to I guess that's true. I could just move people, but it's very complicated for us to do that. So
Yeah,
got it.
I probably wouldn't do that, actually.
I understand. Okay, so now I'm thinking maybe temporarily. What do you think, Elaine? Wednesday, the 27th, noon to 1:30?
I wanted to ask Judge Davis if he already knows if that date would work for him.
Let's see, the
There we go.
27th. And folks, I mean, bear in mind, everybody has that's a Monday, correct?
That's a Wednesday.
Okay, you said 2/7?
October 27th.
Okay. Oh, I will be glad to be present that day. Anytime you want. I have contested divorces that day. I will graciously take myself out of the courtroom to accommodate the meeting schedule of others.
Well, do you want us to try to set something up like from noon to 1:30 or 1:30 to 3?
Historically, that's best for those of us who do jury trial work. I mean, I just simply can't take out an afternoon meeting if I've got a jury trial going.
Right.
Now, the jurors are never opposed to a long lunch, but they are opposed to going out the door at around noon or 12:30 and not coming back till 2:30 or 2:45.
Right,
And it just doesn't work. But this isn't a jury trial for me, but folks, I am just one. We got more important people on this committee than me, so I will participate as best I can. It's just jury trials, they're static.
Well, why don't we see if Katie can do this from the 1:30 to 3, the time that she seems to prefer? Does that work okay? 1:30 to 3, the October 27, that's a Wednesday. So I'll send her an email and ask her if we can do that.
I mean, yeah, I think the judge is saying for him, the noon to 1:30 would be better, but we'll leave it to Katie to weigh in on that. Okay. Any other items any member wants to speak about? I'm not even going to try to set something further out than that. We do have our next meeting already set for Wednesday, October 6th.
Right.
Elaine, do you have anything else?
No, well, oh, Latana.
I'm sorry, just before we end, I do have a question from Tracy Marie.
Oh, that, well, I have that, Latana, and I can respond to her because we don't take public comments during these meetings. This is for member discussion.
That's right.
So I'll write her back. Her email address is in that comment.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. The one other thing I wanted to mention was just making sure that are the 4 of you who are talking with these other states, and again, thank you for doing that because y'all have done a great job. Is it a situation where you can get us a copy of your 20 questions and answers? Just keep that in mind if you could get that to us by October 6th. And that way we would have all of those general questions that this group had already compiled. So keep that in mind if you can have that by the 6th of October for us.
Okay. Anything further? If not, I think we can adjourn.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you on the afternoon of October 6th.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Recording stopped.